Sup, nerds? How's it going? How are you doing? Welcome to... Is it Tuesday? What day is it? Welcome to today's episode of Quintessential Anthropology, also known as QA. Over here in the school where I go to, it is a lovely day. It is unbelievably hot outside, almost unpleasantly hot. Well, not unbelievably hot. It is unpleasantly hot outside, to the point where you have to make this face as soon as you walk out the front door. However, we've got a fairly exciting episode today, and I have a new crush, so I think this is going to go well. Okay, that was bad, but I've been wanting to use that all week. Oh yeah, baby. So for this week's exciting episode of QA, we're going to be delving into the topic of stereotype threat, which is something that I heard about recently, and therefore I'm going to talk about. So, stereotype threat is a concept in social psychology, which is like psychology, except instead of dealing just with your brain, it deals with the way you interact with the entire world. So, rather similar to anthropology, really, except not quite as cool, personally, I think. I mean, I'm not biased at all. No. Not biased. So, what is stereotype threat, first and foremost? Like, how do I explain it in ways that you will understand within about however long I have? Probably about 10 seconds. Actually, most likely, I've just already lost your interest and I'm just rambling on pointlessly. Stereotype threat is the name given to the phenomenon in which individuals in any particular, identity category, we discussed kind of what identities were at some point, I think, or I did it on my blog, which you should have read, because, anyway, when any particular group or identity has a stereotype associated with their performance level in some way or another, so, for example, I don't know, Canadians in apologizing, Asian people being good at math, gooder? Clearly not me and language. White people being naturally not as good at sports as black people are naturally. Stereotypes like that. The things you think of, naturally. Anyway, so the point is, when you're in a situation where you have to perform, and you are a member of a group that has a stereotype of that kind associated with it, the threat of that stereotype, the fact that you're constantly running over that in your head, even if you're doing it not entirely consciously, you're kind of playing a script that goes, oh my god, this is a really hard math test. Shit. They're going to say it's just because I'm bad at math because of my race. Or sex, or gender, or class, or education, or country of origin, or favorite TV show. No, that's not an idea. No, never mind. So, the example that was most striking in the book that I read, which I will post the name of down there somewhere, is an example of a math test. Given to men and women of equal, let me stress this, of equal mathematical skill. They both had similar grades, similar test scores, blah 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 blah. So they were both equally good at math. Okay, we'll establish that. Are we clear on that? Is that crystal clear? Like, do we got that? Do I need to? Okay. Okay. The math test was given to the control group straight. They took it. It was frustrating because math. I don't know. On that test, the women scored not as well as men, because as you might know, there is kind of a stereotype within the math community that women are not quite as good at math as men, which is, of course, bullshit. However, even if you're convinced it's bullshit, it's hard to get that thought out of your head, even when you're trying to solve complex trigonometry problems. The second test, however, was prefaced by an announcement from the test giver, proctologist? No. Was prefaced by an announcement from the test giver, namely, you may have heard the stereotype that women are not as good at math as men, but that's not applicable to this test. I mean, that may be true, but not for this particular piece of mathematical thing. I don't know. So, the test was given again, only this time the threat of stereotyping had been mitigated, removed, actually. Because when the test scores came back, they were like this. So, let's recap, briefly. Men and women given a test in the typical environment, which is to say, under the effect, the threat, as it were, of the stereotype, women are not as good at math as men. Their grades are like this. Women are down here, by the way. Because they're constantly distracted by having to not prove the stereotype every time they do anything at all mathematical. However, remove that threat by saying, oh, People score on this test equally well regardless of sex, gender, orientation, blah, 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 blah. LGBTQA, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly, we have liftoff. The grades become equal is what I'm saying. So that's stereotype threat. It's the magical power of feeling self-conscious in an environment and believing that other people see you in a specific way that is influenced by your race, sex, ethnicity, creed, hairstyle. I don't know. I ran out of momentum there. Basically, it means that you're nervous about being perceived based on only one part of your identity, which is associated with a specific stereotype. So that's the phenomenon of stereotype threat. Now that I've told you about this, which you may already have read about, by the way, if you're in an intro psych class, lots of crazy psych majors out there. Hi, guys. You may be wondering, well, shit, now that I know about this, what the hell is that gonna do for me? I mean, come on. You may even have my reaction, which was, oh, well, that's gonna screw me up every time I take a test forever now. Thanks, asshole. But don't worry, there are things you can do that will mitigate the effects of stereotype threat. You, too, can be safe from stereotype threat. Make sure that your doors and windows are... No, not quite. First and foremost, it's just being aware that it exists, because, obviously, a phenomenon as douchey and unconscious as this is not something that works as well once you're conscious of it. It's kind of like... Well, I can't think of an example. It's kind of like being really awkward and uncertain in your class's freshman year of college and feeling like everyone else is smarter than you. And then you talk to somebody and you realize that everybody feels like that. Which actually brings me to the next point that I was going to make, which is talking to people helps a whole lot with this kind of thing. There was one particular university, whose name I currently forget, who alleviated stereotype threat's effects on their campus by having talking groups, which means that basically a whole bunch of students met up every night and just kind of talked about how they felt, which sounds really touchy-feely, but actually results in a lot of the exchange and negation of those kinds of feelings, like, oh my god, I'm the stupidest person in the class. Which happens surprisingly often your freshman year of college, or your freshman year of anything, or just anywhere, because for some reason people are insecure all the time. That includes me too, by the way. Those are really the two most important things to keep in mind about stereotype threat, but there is one more, although it's contingent, and by contingent I mean eyebrow raise. The other possibility is that you could have a very strong self-motivation, by which you defy the stereotype and gain strength from it, and be like, huh, stereotype threat. Tiny version. Feeling nervous in class because you're the only X in the room? Well, keep in mind, A, it's only stereotype threat, and we just talked about that, so you know what that is. B, talk to other people. They're probably feeling exactly the same way. They also might not tell you that at first, so be prepared to wait a little while. And 3, Remember that stereotypes are only stereotypes, and that your actions do not prove or disprove them in any way. So this has been your brief introduction to the concept of stereotype threat and how to fight it wherever you are, whoever you are, whenever you are. Hello there, people watching in the year 3004. And that brings to a conclusion this week's episode of Quintessential Anthropology, which was unusually long, verbose, fast, and anthropological. So, until next time, this is Michael signing off and telling you to have a spiffy day.